Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. Let me get on to the next slide here, and we'll go ahead and introduce our speakers that we have here today. We have Roy Tanner. He's our marketing manager, global marketing manager here for System 800XA, as a product marketing manager now. We also will have Umesh. We're hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, that he'll be able to connect here in a little bit. He's with our Consult IT group. He's all things alarm management, helps our customers out with high-level alarm management, rationalization, philosophy. And we also have with us a couple of special guests. We have Chris Young. He's a control system specialist with the Metro Wastewater Reclamation District out of Denver. He's been involved in alarm management, graphics, training users, quality control, and troubleshooting logic design. He's been there for 20 plus years with the automation system specifically for 10 years. And of course, if you live in a place like Denver, surrounded by the beautiful Rocky Mountains, you're going to be out there up in the mountains enjoying yourself with his two best buds that you see there in a photo, hiking, fishing, but he also does some golf and hangs out with family and friends, of course. And when he needs a break from them, that's when he heads over to his 800XA manuals. We are hoping to have here in a little bit Ray Joyner. He's a process control team lead with Invista out of Orange, Texas, involved with operator effectiveness, of course, alarm management, graphics as well, and DCS operations. He's been there for 46 years, 34 years specifically in process control, and also lives in a beautiful location there in Texas. And so he spends time fishing with his grandkids, of course, but fishing, and it looks like I'm guessing that he's fishing there in the Gulf in the picture, possibly traveling, and when he needs a break as well, he helps Roy with things like this webinar that we're doing right now. So I'm going to go ahead here and turn things over to Roy. So Roy, the presenter's coming to you.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot. And yeah, so I guess we wanted to do a little bit more of a follow-up for some of the alarm management things that we've been doing with the system. So we traditionally show you all the great features we have in 800XA and maybe some of our alarm management tools and other things surrounding that area. But I think we wanted to kind of see how some customers are putting them to use and maybe see what kind of challenges they had implementing these types of solutions, not just with the product, but really about their organizations and things of that nature. So one thing is that the reason why we're doing a lot of this is we find a lot of customers are upgrading. This is upgrade time, usually when Windows is stopping support for certain versions. Well, that's a great push for a lot of people to evolve to the next level of 800XA. A lot of people continue their evolution path quite often, but I just talked to some customers recently that they still had two sites. They just upgraded one site. They still have one that's at 5.0, which they're still running XP operating systems even. And now that Windows 7 support is ending soon, so the idea is that now is the time. So when people are upgrading, it's a great time to look at things like alarm management, electrical integration, high performance operator graphics, you name it. This is the time usually when people evolve. They have, I guess, maybe the purse strings are open a little more than usual. Maybe this is the time where they can get some more time to put towards these things. So I think it's good to see, what's available and how to put those in place. So right now, I'm going to take Umesh is coming on board here in a second, I think, but I'm going to start with this area. So what is the ultimate map, I guess, for a world-class alarm management system? Usually, so this is the ideal case, and I think what we're going to do is find, every situation doesn't call for this, full-blown world-class alarm management kind of approach, but a lot of pieces and parts kind of really do fit in. So what we're going to do is start out with this. And Umesh, are you there yet?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Umesh, why don't you take us through the map here a little bit, if you could?
Sure. So ISA 18.2, which is the alarm gold standard existing today, which came from IMUA 191, that goes through in detail the structure and the framework that is needed for a world-class alarm system. And it defines a lot of things. It has a lot of requirements in it. However, it doesn't lay out a clear roadmap as to how things should be done. So this slide is an attempt to really show you the mapping of how things can be done in order or in sequence to achieve a world-class alarm management system. So of course, it starts with alarm philosophy, which is more like a blueprint for how the alarm management system should be designed, built, implemented, and maintained. And then the second is really the alarm fingerprint, which is really a snapshot of what the alarm management system is doing right now. So it gives you a clear picture of what the alarm situation is, whether you have too many standing alarms, you have some chattering alarms, nuisance alarms, that kind of thing. So it gives you a snapshot of where the alarm management system is at. The items number 3, 4, and to some extent even 5 are really the tools and the features that are required for implementing and managing your alarm management system. So everyone needs like alarm analysis, which shows the KPIs, the key performance indicators for your alarm management, the reports that go out of it, which are provided to the right personnel to take action. Alarm documentation and rationalization is something that is of importance because a rationalized system would give you the benefits of a well-toned, well-tuned alarm management. It gives you the benefit of having less alarm flood situations. And most importantly, the alarm rationalization gives you a capture of the tribal knowledge which exists in your operations. So you have 30-year experienced operators who know how to handle any alarm at a given situation, but not so much for a novice operator. So that's where the rationalization and documentation comes in handy. The master alarm database assists in that. Management of change provides a way to manage all the changes that are done to the system, and online alarm help and response, which is a direct result from the rationalization, gets the benefit of the operator being aware and being able to use that knowledge to manage the alarms. Advanced alarming techniques like on-off delay timers or setting up of the dead bands that can help in reducing the chattering of the alarms or nuisance alarms and make your alarm lists much more manageable. And then, of course, the periodic audit is recommended by ISA 18.2, which says that every year or so at least, one should have an audit of all these 5 or 6 steps that are listed in this slide.
Okay, so
So
this is the kind of the full-blown map of all the different pieces and parts that usually we would recommend somebody just starting to look at this, maybe follow, depending on what their goals were and things. But I guess you and I have dealt with some people, over the years that, you know, maybe they don't have the staffing or they don't have the, I guess the backing from management, or they don't have the full blown vision, I guess, or capability to put it all in place like that over the time it takes to do all those things. And sometimes people want to take shortcuts, not shortcuts maybe, but take advantage of some things to kind of take care of the low hanging fruit to improve their situation in more of a short term. All the way to people that want to implement this type of alarm management strategy. So I guess maybe you can take us through a little bit the different people that you've dealt with and kind of maybe where they were at. And here's a slide to kind of guide you a little bit.
yeah, so the the people who are just heard of alarm management and like have heard about it for the first time, we have seen people where people have read somewhat about the alarm management through various ISA 18.2 specification or through other literature, but are not unsure. They're not sure where to start to get that alarm management program going. um, we have seen even people who have taken a serious look at this, and it could get pretty overwhelming because there is a lot out there in terms of literature and also in terms of the specification. I mean, it gets pretty boring and pretty hairy pretty fast. So we have seen people who have really taken a serious look at it, but they certainly could benefit from a guidance or help provided to them. And there are other people in situations where they have really mastered the alarm management and done a really good job at managing, not only managing their alarms, but also optimizing it to the extent that their alarm lists are pretty well manageable. Their operators don't uh, get overwhelmed by alarm flood situations, things like that. So there is a spectrum of users out there who have some level of alarm management at their operations.
Okay, and let's see. I think we wanted to do a poll question first before we get to our guest speakers really quick. So the users that are out there, system owners and things, kind of where are you at right now? Is I guess the request that you're gonna see across from a poll question. You know, are you at the stage where I need to do something, I need to get started? Are you at the stage where you've done some research but haven't really started yet? Maybe you're right in the middle of it. Maybe you're doing a rationalization project. Maybe you're implementing some of the features right now, or working with somebody like Umesh or our advanced services guys. Or maybe you've implemented a strategy and you're starting to see the benefits from it, and you want to kind of find out how you're matched up with other people, other companies and things. So which kind of let us know kind of where you're at in those different areas. And I'm not sure if I see I don't know, Bart, if you can kind of report if you see the results there.
Yeah, so people are they are submitting their responses. Thank you for that. When you select something, I think there you do have to click a submit button before we get to see it. But I actually am seeing your responses coming through. I can see that the largest concentration. Well, actually now it's a tie between kind of getting started and having done some research, but not quite taken jumped into the pool yet. So that's where the
Okay.
bulk of people seem to be living in that area.
All right. Well, perfect. Because hopefully there are some things to be learned here. So let's go. I think we're going to start with Mr. Joyner, who has joined us. Let's see if wanted to see maybe if Raymond, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep. I can hear you. A little faint, but I can hear you.
Okay.
And just maybe a little introduction to your site there, a little bit, and kind of where you're at.
Okay. Yes, we're in the nearing the end of a project where we're installing the new 800XA consoles, and we're putting in actually the last one, and as we speak right now, and this effort to replace the Process Portal B consoles that we have. And so in doing this, we decided to go for a lot more than just replacing the hardware. And so we have our goal is to create a true high performance environment for the operators. And so we have implemented high performance graphics, and we have done alarm rationalization, and we purchased the Alarm Insight tool, and we are using that, and we are now getting KPIs emailed out to the appropriate people, and so that's kind of where we are. We had started trying to get a handle on our alarming situation 2 or 3 years ago, so we've been working, had got some of the low hanging fruit taken care of. So our numbers aren't real bad right now, but we're still, we can, with these tools, we're able to see probably a better picture of where we're at and how we're doing.
Yeah, I see that. I guess so. I remember a few years ago, because we were looking at some of your sites, maybe not in Vista, but maybe it was GP or somebody else that they were looking at site solutions, and at the same time, there was a corporate-wide initiative to drive this from the top to multiple industries and multiple of your sister companies.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, that kind of was driven down from the top then, I guess, to do something there. So did that kind of push you into that high performance area, or
Yes.
were you guys already trying to get there at
Well,
least to the?
no, I mean, it did push us because, and some of it we weren't aware of, and we started, we got the book by Bill Hollifield and
Hmm.
those guys, the high performance HMI, and started looking at that and thinking, this is really uh, what we need to be doing, and it appeared to be what a lot of industries doing to get to where they need to be. It was interesting reading that book because um, it kind of was a story of my career, some of the mistakes that we had made. It seems like a lot of others were making them too. So
I hate to say it, but
mhm,
when I was doing projects
mhm,
long ago, we had this DCS that had this really cool template based configuration, and you could go in and configure the tags and stuff and things and different options, and there was the alarm option. And so we not a lot of information was given about the project. It was more like, here's the operating range of the thing. That was about it. And nothing about alarm management. So what did you do? You basically turned down all the alarms, gave it, separated them out and went on your way. And so I'm like, interesting. I probably caused some of the problems that we're actually having to correct today,
yeah,
but
exactly.
that was the deal. Sometimes people wouldn't put them in at all and have to fill them in on the fly or during commissioning, or somebody would just redo it. It wasn't like the enunciator panel only had so many, windows in there, right? So many things to
That's
be put in
correct.
there. So
Yeah,
dating
yeah,
ourselves, of course. So,
yeah. Yeah, we
um,
adopted an alarm philosophy, based on the ISA standard, uh, probably 2 years ago, and we're just now implementing it. With we're implementing it as we implement the new graphics, the new HMI, through this project. So we didn't attempt to apply it to the old system, but we are
okay.
applying it as we go forward, and that has worked.
What about your alarm rationalization? So alarm rationalization, where you're gonna, like Umesh was saying, you want to basically document um, the alarms in the system. What's the consequences, the recommended action? What's gonna the result if you
Yes.
don't take care of the alarm? And so that usually takes a little bit of time to run through. And I see you have thousands of IO here. So
Yes. Yes. So we brought in a third party, and we've went unit by unit uh, with alarm rationalization, and then taken that output, and that's what we started the operators with on the new consoles as we brought each console online for each unit. Well, it had the new alarming system that was compliant with our new alarm philosophy, and that's kind of how we've brought it online, and we we actually went from having what we called SOCs and CVs to just priority ones, twos, and threes. And the alarm philosophy the says that you have an alarm if there's an operator response to it,
mhm.
and so that's it was different than how we had done it before and how we had thought about it before. And so if the response is quick, it's a priority one. If the response is got a little more time, it's a priority two, and more time, it's a priority three. But only you have an audible alarm if there is an operator response required. And then we took all of our consequence of deviation, uh, operator response, all that stuff is now in Alarm Helper, and that's at the operator's fingertips. So it used to be in a procedure, in the procedure was also the alarm settings, and we are archiving all of those procedures so that we no longer have two sources of truth, but only one source, and that's in the 800XA system. And so that's where the settings. That's where in the DCS is where the settings are. They're not in the procedure, and the uh, all of the consequence of deviation, operator response stuff is in there, and that's where it's kept, and that's where it'll be updated.
Mm.
And so that's how we have approached it.
So you're using some features in the system, like the alarm operations option has, like alarm shelving and grouping and things like that. So
Yes,
yeah, so using some of those to help manage some of the alarms. And alarm helper is a nice way to present that data from that alarm rationalization to the operator, I think, and
correct.
to make that in
Yes,
there, and then you can modify it from there and things. And
yes,
the
we've
alarm,
gave, yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. No, I just
Uh,
you go, please.
I was going to say that we had given the operators the ability to shelve alarms. They have a 2 hour, a 4 hour, an 8 hour, or a 12 hour option. And before, all we had available to us was to inhibit alarms, and they stayed inhibited forever unless somebody went and uninhibited them. The
Mm-hmm.
shelving feature is much better, where they automatically, come off of the shelf status after that time runs out.
Yeah, that automatically come back in for you, and then
Yeah,
you have everything from one source. You don't have to. It's not really in the controller logic. It's really kind of on the
e-
console side of it. Yeah.
exactly. And we don't allow them to inhibit anymore.
Mm. And the alarm insight is one thing that we get a lot of users probably a little confused because we have multiple ways to measure alarms or your alarm management, how it's operating, I guess, for reporting. So one thing I know that since it's a corporate push for you guys, there's a lot of reporting that you have to push up to like management because I think you have some subject matter experts or some other people looking across multiple sites and industries, I think, probably doing some high level reporting and data gathering. Um, and that's probably Alarm Insight is a full blown alarm and event historian that's extracting all these alarm and events out of the 800XA system to help do those reports and things. Does
Yes,
that sound about right?
yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I think we have some pictures here. One thing is I wanted to ask you how you're doing with this. So after doing a lot of this work, so it's been a few years now, and I see some results statements here, but maybe you can comment on what you're seeing, kind of the fruits of your labor, I guess.
Okay. Um, well, these KPI reports, we found that we didn't have enough knowledge to build them like we wanted to. We did bring in an ABB person to help us do the underlying SQL queries and everything that it takes to get these alarms right, these
Hmm.
reports right. And so once we did that, they turned out to be very useful because we had them, divided by operating areas instead of, all together. And so this the one that's called the daily analysis report, it is emailed every day out to the first line supervisors and to the control room operators, and we're using the page 2 of that, which is really like the shelved alarms, or the, excuse me, not the shelved, the stale alarms, or what I would call standing alarms. And
Hmm.
they go over these, and we have greatly reduced the number of standing alarms. Used to, we'd have, you know, 2 or 3 pages of standing alarms, and now that's we have just a handful in these 2 areas that we have attacked that in so far, which is the synthesis and refining areas. And so we're starting to look at this stuff in a different way, and trying to figure out, why is this a standing alarm? Why is it staying in alarm? We've added some smart alarming, in DCS logic. We have fixed some things that were broken that should have been fixed a long time ago, and these type of things.
What's the time outside target? I was kind of interested in that. Remember?
uh, oh, that's like the number of days that it's been a standing alarm, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So you've reduced
Oh,
in some
oh,
of the. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, that's on the frequency, the top 20. Yeah, so some of those may um, no, that's the time that it was actually in alarm condition, I guess.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right. So if it's outside a
yeah,
certain,
yeah,
time that you set up, you can set up maybe the threshold for when it's
yeah,
outside of target, and then keep track of that.
yeah,
And the so in some of your sites, you've reduced that standing alarm list like from pretty substantially, like you said, up to cut it in half or even more. And then you had another statistic there, I think you gave me on the how many alarms per hour you have, which I think, like you said, you must have taken some good steps early on to
we
be
we
from
we
12.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're down, down to the ISA standards, which a lot of people are striving for, right? I think.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, our goal is 6 alarms per hour per operator,
uh,
and
and this what we're looking at here is this is Alarm Insight, right? So this is like a nice.
yes,
These are the reports that you've gotten some help configuring from ABB
yeah,
to kind of for weekly reports, daily reports, and things. And then some of these are good general statistics that you can then send to operations and things, and also
yeah,
your management, other people that want to dive in to look at certain statistics have access to anything they
right,
need. And then also, this is an alarm and event historian, so you can pretty much do some ad hoc analysis and dive
yeah.
in and do, I want to maybe a certain incident investigation and dive in for, you can look at 3 months, you can look at 3 days, and whatever you want to do without a lot of. Um,
That's correct. Yes.
and one, I noticed this one report though is pretty interesting that I think I have it blown up here. So this is your kind of system overview that you felt these statistics were most important to drive. I think this is what you get.
Yeah.
Is this what the gets
Yeah.
sent? Yeah.
Yeah. And you see those P4s now; those are non-audible information only, and we still got a lot of junk in there
Mm.
that we need to deal with, but we just haven't dealt with it yet. We've been trying to get the P1s, twos, and threes more under
Okay.
control. So you see some high numbers on those P4s, but they're not audible. They're informational only. There's no operator response, but there's still some garbage in there.
Okay. Well, you're making some headway, I guess.
Yeah.
And this is
Yes.
pretty interesting. And this, I think you sent me a nice picture here. So I see that you
Mm-hmm.
have some high performance graphics,
Yeah.
or at least to a certain level. I see you're
Yeah.
using some of the symbols and things like that we have in the system, as
Yeah.
well as this is the alarm helper that is part of the alarm operations option, which is
Yeah.
tied to your alarm rationalization information.
Yes.
And I think, let's see here. So this is an example of an operator response consequence if it's missed and things like that. So that's pretty
Right.
interesting.
And this is, there's still a lot of work that can be done here. I mean, with this information at the operator's fingertips, he doesn't have to go pull a procedure. He just right clicks and he can see all this information. And so as I see this, this is a great way, especially for young operators, to be able to have some knowledge of the older operators. And we're making an effort, we've just started an effort here to really beef this up, this the operator response and consequence information, because some of it, as we've looked at it and we pull this stuff from procedures, it was pretty generic, and there's a lot more that can be put here, and so we're making an effort to do that now. And
Excellent.
especially since we're getting a lot of younger operators, older ones are retiring, we're trying to capture some of that knowledge with this tool.
Yeah, I think they call it knowledge transfer, right? And
Hmm.
some
Yeah.
ways to do that, and capturing in this kind of type of information and SOPs or some kind of directions. And one thing I was remember, we have a feature called it's called alarm response, but that term is used loosely with different things. But this one is really meant to, upon an alarm happening, what displays do you want to have open? It will automatically open up to 4 aspects. And it could be with this tag, or it could be maybe the area graphic and other things that you want to
Yes.
direct them to. And that's something, I guess, anything you can do to point them in the right direction to make the right decision. And this is obviously one of
Right.
those that would be key.
Right.
So And let's see, I see some questions coming in. Please go ahead and ask questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to those at the end. I'll try to allow some time at the end for a lot of questions. Well, thanks, Raymond. I think we'll probably get some more questions for you in a second if you could hang out. And I think we
Okay.
wanted to move over to Chris now. Chris is from MWRD, and maybe Chris, maybe give a little update of your site and kind of some things that have been happening.
Yeah, thanks. Our plan is very similar to, as far as the alarm part goes, as Ray. We have a plant with 800XA running. We're running a lot of 800 controllers. We currently transition from our old mod controllers, and we have 60 so PLCs that we're using Kepware to bring in other information. It seems as technology is going on, we get more and more PLCs that we have to. Our alarm process, basically what kind of kicked us off, I think more than anything, is operations is actually was requesting for us to have tools and resources to be able to manage the alarms, as well as we were getting into a situation, as most plants do, where engineering would come out with different processes in our plant, and they would just mass produce alarms with no thought or alarm philosophy to basically back up those alarms. So when we brought in Consult IT, that was kind of one of our first steps, was to step in and set up the alarm philosophy, and then get the buy-in from the senior management as well as operations on where we were going to go with managing alarms and what alarms we were actually going to allow in our system. As well as Ray was talking about, we did have a lot of a changeover from our old operators leaving the plant and the new ones coming in. I would say in the last 5 to 6 years, we probably have a good 95% turnover. So a lot of our operators are not experienced as our older ones were. And this plan has been around for quite a few years now. And as those new operators are coming in, they're kind of learning on the fly. And there was not a real good turnover from the old to the new. So we've been able to incorporate some tools as well as using to capture how to respond to alarm and different scenarios of that situations. I think that's, you know, the big thing that we've, I think, come across with this whole process is we actually have tools for operators to manage the alarms, whereas before we did this, operations knew we had a problem with overload of alarms, but there was nothing, no tools for them to really take a process to eliminate those alarms or reduce the reduction.
Mm. And you know, you're right. You are very common to Raymond. You had Process Portal B at one time, I believe, as well, right?
I think
Maybe
we
that was
had like
before
a
you.
Taylor or something. It's way before my time, but
No, I remember because I know we did some alarm kind of help or access to documentation with the Process Portal B system as well, because that was one of your some goals of yours back then, even at least on site. And the alarm philosophy is interesting. I know Umesh has been involved with doing these, and one thing we try to kind of state that if almost to push a little bit, the alarm philosophy could be a very generic document of how you want to handle alarms in the system, and it definitely has pieces of how the organization handles alarms and change management and things. But there's also the case where, you know, you could also get a little more system specific where you're saying, hey, these are the features that I'm going to use when handling alarms, I guess. And the more you have embedded in the system, I guess the more system features have to kind of creep into that alarm philosophy and of ones you're using and not using, because it's almost got to act as a guide for other engineers and other people maybe configuring things. So I don't know if your alarm philosophy maybe gets that far down to say, here's how to shelve an alarm, right? Or maybe the procedures and things.
Yeah, our alarm philosophy does cover down to the level of pretty much a standard operating procedure of how we're going to manage those alarms.
Mm-hmm.
we've actually have another plant that's come online in the last couple of years, and we incorporated our alarm philosophy into that plant as well. They're using a different product than ABB at that plant, so we've been having a little bit of a struggle on the management, the tool side of it, but we're making our process through that. I think one of the good things about the alarm philosophy as well is we're able to, it's a living philosophy, so we're able to update that as we go along. So when different situations arise that maybe we have to add or subtract something from that philosophy, we're able to go back to a base point and reevaluate that and update it.
And I know that Ray had a third party. I think they did the rationalization a little separately. I think from with some efforts with a third party organization. How did you guys do your rationalization work?
We actually used our rationalization with Umesh and his group, the Consult IT.
Okay.
They came in and sat down with us. I think it was almost 4 weeks, Umesh, over a year time.
Right. Yeah. So there was some rationalization,
We just-
coaching, and the process itself. Yeah.
Yeah, we just pieced it together. You know, they would come in for 2 weeks. We'd work on some pieces of it. We'd kind of evaluate that. They'd come in again, you know, next quarter for another couple of weeks, and we would get operations people that were basically going to be responsible for their alarms to come in and make their decisions on how they wanted to actually manage that. And once we had the buy-in with everybody, we were able to start incorporating the tools and stuff to use.
What an interesting thing is because you're both accomplishing, you and Ray are accomplishing very similar goals, but you probably have more of a site solution where you're using some of the built-in alarm analysis features of 800XA instead of having like Alarm Insight, which is a full-blown alarm and event historian. And I think also there's a built-in master alarm database solution too. I think we have a picture of that in a couple slides. But the I guess so you're seeing some good results as well. I think over the last couple of years, I guess that you've been trying to get all this kind of running. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
I'd say some of the big things that we saw is just the reduction of standing alarms, like Ray was talking about at his plant as well. You know, when we first started this process, we had alarms our alarm package was anywhere from 300 to 400 alarms sitting in there, and some of them were over a year old. So today we probably run somewhere on an average of 30 to 40 alarms in our alarm package, and maybe another 40 in the actual shelved alarm process, but at least the shelved is starting a process to take care of whatever malfunctions are out in the plant that have to be dealt with through maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
One of our other big accomplishments I think that's pretty cool is we were able to reduce our priority 1 alarms. I think when we first started, probably 15% of our alarms were priority 1, and we now have that down to close to 1%. And I think the big handoff on that was part of the alarm philosophy. Operations used to be their standard was if they missed a couple of alarms, supervisor elevates it to a priority 1. And before you know it, we had too many priority 1s, and now priority 1s lost their value. So I think that was a pretty good, helpful thing that's come out of this, eliminating those priority 1s.
Yeah, that is one thing I think for the different priorities of alarms. That is one thing that I know the 18.2 standard or just best practices is to, you know, how many the percentage of priority 1, 2, and 3 type of alarms should be at a certain guideline, I guess, if you will. And you're definitely well under that guideline, I think, in a positive way. So that's excellent. So let's take a look at a couple of the things screen dumps. So yeah, I see here. So you've implemented alarm shelving and alarm hiding. So a lot of people ask me the difference between those two. And I mean, shelved alarms is more for the operator to control, where he can put it on a shelf for a couple hours, and then it will, you know, and actually give it a reason code. So that's kind of captured as in operator actions, and then it will come back into in more of the mainstream operator view after a certain duration in time. Where hidden alarms, you have to configure those. It's a rule-based setting, right? That you can say, hey, I'm going to hide this unit's alarms or these tags based on these certain conditions. So that's more of an engineered solution. Maybe you could touch on how you're using those two.
Yeah, the hidden rule is probably a pretty good tool that we use to reduce our stale alarms. We have a lot of equipment on our plant that goes out of service, and it can go out of service for a day up to a couple of months. So when we take stuff out of service now, we're able to build these rule sets in that will just hide those alarms. It doesn't disable the alarm or anything like that, but it just puts it on a hidden list. So if a whole unit goes out of service and there's 50 alarms associated with that unit, those alarms are now on the hidden list as long as the out of service selection was made. Previously, before this, a lot of our programmers would try and program that in, which just becomes a headache in the long run. Just managing it, number one, and then trying to figure out where that alarm was supposed to be or whatnot. So the hidden alarms are a nice tool to use for in out of service type things. The other nice thing is an operator can pull that hidden alarm list up before they go to put something in service, and they can kind of almost do a check sheet of, hey, is this alarm going to clear when we go back in service, or is there something I need to address before we put that back in service? So that's kind of a cool little tool that they can use. The shelved alarm list is really good for the operator. So at our plant, when an alarm comes in, like Ray stated as well, every alarm that comes in needs an operator action. So sometimes the alarms will come in and the operator will go out and take action on it, but it's something of a malfunction or something that's out there that we have to send maintenance out to. So instead of leaving that alarm sitting on the active list where an operator is constantly looking at it, they can put it on the shelve list, and then our supervisors actually go through that shelve list and they'll pluck out the ones that need work orders and they'll put it on a separate disabled list, and then they can write the work order for it, and that alarm is now taken out of service. They can put the work order in and have it done. If the work order doesn't get written, it actually will get released by the end of their shift off the shelf list. So the next operator that comes on will have to go through the same process of sending somebody out there, see that it's still broken, and that it needs to be addressed. So the shelf list's been a good way for operations to kind of manage things when the alarms are coming in pretty fast. So we can take the priorities and say, hey, we looked at that, put it on the shelf. What's the next alarm that's in the priority? So I can start delegating who needs to go where.
And a lot of times, what I tell people is what's nice is that it's on this operator console layer, right? It's on this top end where you probably had a situation where you had mod controllers and then you had 800M controllers, you have PLC Connect, you have different things going on, and to be able to do these things like Raywin was talking about as far as the inhibits, right? That sometimes, that was down in the controller layer and sometimes it's still needed or used. But the more we can extract out of there, I guess you're kind of freeing up a lot of logic space for actual control versus handling how the top end works. And so it's a nice way to consolidate or kind of normalize it between different controllers that you have at the bottom. So I usually, tell people this is kind of a nice feature to be able to do this at that top end. And make everything kind of the same. And then you have an alarm analysis report here. Maybe you can, so these are, one thing with 800XA is part of that alarm operations, you have an alarm analysis option. This is not a full-blown alarm and event historian. It's really a KPI generator based on the alarm and event list in 800XA. So when you point this feature to an alarm list, it will generate these statistics. So you can do it on different plant levels based on your structures. And it looks like you can configure it for different time durations. I guess the most popular is like a week, right? I think you have a 7-day report there that we're looking at.
Yeah, we run a 7-day weekly report as well as a 30-day report. The 7-day is really for the operations to kind of take a look at and supervisors to take a look at, as well as I pretty much look at on a daily basis. The nuisance alarms are the top 20 actions are the ones that have been chattering the most. I can kind of pluck those off right at the beginning and take a look at those. If there's a level device out there or something that's chattering, we can go in and look and see, hey, is it set up right, or is there a work order written on this? So that's a good way for us to kind of take a look at. We also have checked how operations is managing their alarms, so we can see it's kind of hard to see on the slide, I bet, but at the bottom of it, it tells you what's the active alarms, the shelved alarms, the hidden alarms, and you can kind of see how an operator will come in during his shift and how much he's shelving alarms versus managing an alarm. So it's a pretty quick snapshot of what's going on, as well as the alarm rates. Sometimes we get pieces of equipment that go out of service or get shut down, or maybe we have a power bump or something on the plant that will flood the alarm package. So if we see high peaks of alarm rate that's not usual, we like to go in and see what's going on with that as well as the alarm priority distribution like we talked about earlier. Sometimes we'll have supervisors that will start elevating alarms and kind of bypassing our alarm management. So that's a good tool for us to see what's going on with that. Or we might have something that more of a critical area on the plant that's alarming more than the rest of the plant. So that kind of shows us in the 7-day versus the 30-day.
Okay. And let's see, you have another, and then one other thing you implemented, Umesh from Consult AT has their, or from the services group, I guess, he has a master alarm database solution that actually is an aspect system, a system extension, if you will, to 800XA. So what this does is captures various parameters like the alarm enables, disables, the actual values and things, and kind of stores that off to a baseline. And then you can actually pull up a discrepancy report. And I think you have a picture of one right in front of us where it shows the current value. And I can see right now that the high limit and the high limit has been changed, I guess. And so maybe can you tell me how you guys are implemented this and use it?
Yeah, this tool this is kind of like the bread and butter, I call it, of our system. When we first started this system, we baselined every single tag that is in our system. And in the years past, we've had alarms that the alarm set points have been changed, the priorities get changed, and our supervisors are actually allowed to make those changes. But we have a change management program now where they can make the change, but they're supposed to follow through with the change management process, which lets the senior management above know, hey, I made this change. This is the reason I made this change, and they can either accept or deny that change. So this tool here actually captures that. So if a supervisor, on a night shift decides he don't want to hear that alarm tonight, and he ups alarm set point or something like that, that's his prerogative or whatnot. But he has to put in that change of management, and if he doesn't do that, this gets captured on a daily or a weekly report, and we go through that. And if the change management didn't go through and it wasn't accepted, we actually go back in and put these alarms back to where they're supposed to be. So it's a great way for us to keep track of the alarm philosophy, that these alarms and the alarm rationalization, when they were set, that's what was accepted. And for us to make a change on that, the right people have to be contacted and the right decisions have to be made before we can allow those changes to stay in the system like that. As well as, I know Ray was talking about, he had the capability to do like a alarm response on his alarms. We have a similar thing that we're using the SOP aspect on that allows our operators also to be able to go, if a high alarm comes in, they can click on that high tab and it will tell them this is possible reasons why it's high and these are the consequences. And if it's high, what's really going to happen? So that's been kind of helpful for us as well.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing very similar things, just a couple different ways based on a lot of the features that are in the system. And I guess the only difference is depending how or what you use to implement the strategy is what do you have to do with the data and how many people are looking at it, and maybe different systems that it applies to and things. So I think that's pretty nice. I think with what's nice about this is when you make a backup, when you have it all included in one system, when you make a backup, it all comes with it. And I know that Alarm Insight has the same, very similar master alarm database philosophy. It has that capability as well as one of the options that can be put in there. So the beauty, the bad thing is we have so many the solutions to go. It could get a little confusing. The good news is we definitely have everything you could possibly need to get that strategy going and enacted. And that's one thing we try to do is help people through, what's the best solution for what you need to do. Well, thanks, Chris. I'm going to go through this a little bit, and then we have another poll question, and then we'll get to some questions and things. So please put in those questions if you have for anything for Raymond or Chris or Umesh. So one thing is, Umesh, I think we looked at based on where you find people. We talked about people are in different stages and how they could get started. And I know you've helped them quite a bit realize, what are your goals, and then where do you want to be, and how to get started. I see you've laid out some different, solution paths. I guess maybe you can go through those a little bit.
Right. So when we talk to customers, I mean, and we talk to a lot of them, and we notice that many of the customers have a goal in mind or a priority in mind, along with a long-term vision. So they know where they are at and what they want to do today, and then they also have a good path in mind where they would like to be in another 2, 3 years. So we did a solution path category for these customers, and one can see that the most simple path is okay where the customer needs some visibility into the alarm management. So that provides the basic alarm analysis, things like reporting or tracking of alarm set point changes, just like what Chris described a few minutes ago. Performance improvement is the next step. So besides visibility, okay, now you want to do something more about what the alarm management visibility tools are telling you. So in that sense, you want to do some improvements in your alarm system performance, which can be through deadband or delay timers or suppression or inhibition of these alarms. And of course, along with the visibility tools, you can add those to the performance improvement and get that benefit of actually reducing your standing alarms or reducing your the top 20 to a manageable level. So you just keep plucking at them like Chris described and even Ray described, and get them to a level where now you don't have much of those chattering alarms or the alarms that cause a nuisance to the operators. That allows the performance of the alarm system itself to be at the level which can be uh, which is really desirable from both from the operator as well as from the maintenance point of view. But that is still not addressing the underlying problem of not being rationalized. So a rationalized system truly gives you the benefit of going to the root and really looking at some of the things that should be addressed, starting with alarm philosophy, and then, of course, looking at the alarm rationalization. So that's the rationalized system. And then the world-class alarm management system provides pretty much everything that one needs under the roof to have a world-class alarm management system, which covers pretty much everything on the left-hand side, plus more.
Okay, and I think we want to do one last poll question before we open up for questions. Where does it that you want to head next? I guess so. Do you want to improve the visibility of where you are right now? Do you need to improve the performance, reduce those bad actors, those low-hanging fruit, maybe a little bit? Do you want to get started on that full-blown package or that strategy where you're doing alarm philosophy and start rationalizing alarms, or maybe take the next step? Maybe you're pretty far down the line, but you want to implement that world class and kind of fill in some of the gaps that you don't have going right now, and making sure that you have the full right towards this, maybe some of the standards like ISA 18.2 and things. So maybe just give a little indication of where you're at. And Bart, if you can give a little summary, what you're seeing.
Yeah, so people are sending us, their submissions here right now. We're seeing probably here the second option is leading a bit, and actually it's leading quite a bit now, and all the other options are pretty much even.
Yeah, we get that a lot, I think. Sometimes I don't know, Umesh, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is the big picture. A lot of large companies that have the backing and the staffing to do it, they are tackling this issue quite a bit. We see some of the more sites that are a little more maybe staff challenged and they have a lot of other work to do. They want to do something. And one thing they do is maybe they just want to get started on some low hanging fruit and maybe get some of the built-in features going just so they can kind of see where they're at and know how to correct certain like nuisance alarms and some of the low hanging fruit kind of thing. Would you agree with that, Umesh? Or
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we see a lot of our customers fall into this second performance improvement uh, list, right? Because that's where they see a lot of benefit in going through the bad actors and improving the alarm system performance by using the visibility tools to tell them how the alarm management is doing.
okay, and I just put a slide up here just to show that some of those things that we can do. I mean, again, we can cover from day one all the way to that world-class alarm management strategy and how to get there. So whether it be some alarm analysis tools like Alarm Insight, Alarm Portal, or the built-in stuff to 800XA. Umesh has a starter package that he goes in and loads all the features of 800XA, trains you on them and stuff, just gets them all up and running in 1 week. I don't know if I took words out of your mouth, and hopefully I didn't overstate that. but
No,
some things like that. But also we do Alarm Insight implementation. Alarm Portal is another alarm analysis tool that's used a lot by the power gen groups. So there's a lot of things there. Also fingerprints and things, alarm fingerprints to see where you're at. Maybe sometimes people send their alarms in some of their database stuff, and we spit them back out some statistics from doing that in house and crunch some numbers. So all the way to implementing the system and these other solutions. All the way to do state-based alarming and some advanced things. So we have you covered if you need help in certain areas. So please don't feel or please contact us if you need any help there. But with that, I'm going to try to get to some questions really quick here. So some questions that came in. Can you link drawings, PIDs, loop sheets, manuals, or part numbers inventory to these alarm helper pages? And I'm trying to think. No, we definitely, I'll take that initially. I know that we can tie all of those things to an object. So we have a documentation management offering that's part of our system. There's no option for it in things where we can do file viewers and other things and bookmarks, dive into PDF drawing things. We can bring up CAD drawings and other items, loop sheets, and we can tie those all to your object types, if you will. As far as the alarm helper, I'd have to check if you can modify the alarm helper to include links like that. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that, Umesh or Ray. I don't
the
know if you know.
alarm helper, as far as I know, doesn't have the linkage to the drawings or the PIDs or any document. So the text itself directly comes from a database. However, the other alarm response system from which Chris showed, that one, the version 2 has a feature where you can have a hyperlink that can point to a drawing or a PID or a loop sheet that makes relevance to that alarm.
Okay. Yep. So I know there's definitely a way we can accomplish that, whether it's through the alarm helper or not, or depending on what solution there is, I'm sure we can accommodate that. Are these alarm management features and alarm helper standard with 800XA 6.0 and later? So, well, a lot of them that I showed you, there was the alarm operations option, as well as alarm hiding. That is part of the system that's been there for quite a while. The alarm operations option includes, I can remember here, alarm analysis, some of the KPI generation, if you will. It includes alarm shelving, alarm grouping, and the alarm helper. The alarm helper also ties into very well into Alarm Insight as well. That alarm helper kind of tool actually came from Alarm Insight. So there are some advantages when having Alarm Helper along with Alarm Insight. And Alarm Insight is a full-blown alarm and event historian offering, where we're bringing in the alarm and events through things like OPC AE, and then we're dividing them up into different areas. Like Raymond was saying that he had some help from ABB to try to get down how he divided up his alarms to produce really nice reports that he can use throughout throughout his enterprise, throughout his organization. So the Alarm Insight is a separate alarm and event historian offering, if you will, as well as the Alarm Portal. But the Alarm Operations has some built-in stuff, this KPI generation, if you need that. And one thing that's nice is usually people want to do alarm shelving or something like that. So they usually have the alarm operations option anyways. So even if you have Alarm Insight or some other package, if it's easier, you can always have operations want some views into things. You can very quickly configure the built-in stuff to have that as a supplement to these alarm and event historians. Let's see. That's all I have in there right now. I know some people have said they wanted to have more information on Alarm Helper, and we'll definitely get in touch with you on that. If you have any, I don't know, Bart, if you see any other questions, that's all I see right now in my view.
Oh, Roy, I don't see any more questions.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that then. I wanted to thank Chris and Raymond for helping out. I really appreciate seeing how some of these things are being used. I'm glad they're working out. I'm glad you're seeing some really good improvements, and your plants hopefully are running much safer than they were hopefully a few years ago. And again, thank you very much for your help with this. With that,
Yeah,
I guess, Bart, I'll leave it over to you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chris. So from everyone here at ABB, hey, thanks for joining us today.